Hi, and welcome to MC221 Media Elements. This is the first of 7 courses offered in the Multimedia Journalism option by the Department of Mass Media. And many of you who are enrolled in this course are taking this as a major in the department, but I also am aware that some of you who have chosen to come along with us in this course are maybe taking a major in one of the other 3 options in the department, or you might not even be a major in the Department of Mass Media. Maybe there are some other things about this course that you're looking to learn about as a result of whatever your major might be. So, bottom line is, I welcome you to the course, regardless of what your major is, and I hope that you find it to be something that is both educational and, I don't know, perhaps even entertaining at times. But I want it to be a good experience for you. You may very well be aware that this is not the way that this course normally would start. It is not an online course. But for the beginning of this semester, we will be doing everything online for one very simple reason, and that is that I'm in the process of recovering from surgery on a torn rotator cuff. I am Dr. Bruce Mims. I'm your professor for this course, and I don't know when we will begin meeting face to face. That's not my choice. That's my surgeon's choice. And so until such time as he approves and releases me to return to campus and to return to the classroom, then we'll be doing our lecturing with PowerPoints that are delivered over Moodle. And all of your assignments will have instructions on Moodle, and you'll also be submitting them that way. Just a quick note or two about my professional background. Mine comes out of radio broadcasting. I started out as a DJ and then moved into other areas of production of commercials and selling advertising, engineering, working on the equipment, and most importantly for this course, part of my professional career was involved in gathering, writing, and delivering news in radio broadcast. So you know a little bit more about me. In later years, I have become the co-author of the textbook that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. I'm co-author with Dr. John Hendricks at Stephen F. Austin University in Nacogdoches, Texas. And this is a textbook that's used in about 150 universities around the world for people who are studying the techniques of radio broadcasting. I'll have a little bit more to say about this textbook later in the semester because it will give me the opportunity to talk with you from a first-hand and very professional perspective of matters that deal with ethics and copyright law, which, by the way, are 2 important subjects of this course later this semester. So, I guess you're wondering, what is the focus of this course? What are we going to be doing? What are we going to be talking about this semester? So, here it is in red. Our focus is on the techniques of storytelling in today's multimedia journalism environment. It's a way that we learn the process and the techniques, sort of the rules of the road, of how in today's multimedia world that professional journalists are using these techniques to tell stories, to deliver news. Now, I think it's very important on this first day because I've had students in previous semesters ask me at the end of the first day of class, or maybe even later in the semester, about some of the things that we talk about and learn in this course. And I think it's really important on this very first day that I talk about what this course is and what it isn't. And what this course is not is a course where we will be spending any significant amount of time learning how to use some of the professional media software, media production software applications. We'll be using some very simple consumer style, 7th grade high school level, junior high school level applications of software that either you probably have already seen and used or will come to use and appreciate with only just a little bit of work on your behalf. And I noted parenthetically that we do have 2 courses in the multimedia journalism sequence in which we get very much in depth into the professional software used for audio and video production. MC323 Sound for Media, that's a course I teach. And then we have other professors that teach MC327, which is its corresponding visual for the mass media. So again, if you're interested in a course that gets heavily involved in manipulating, using, and applying the media production software, please understand that this course is not that course. And, if you decide that maybe you have enrolled in this course thinking that it's this, and I'm telling you, well, maybe no, it's not this, it's that, and you want to withdraw from the course and then come back and study with me or one of our other professors in MC323 and MC327, then I would encourage you to consider that. Now, that's only if you are outside the multimedia journalism option major. For those of you who are MMJ, multimedia journalism, in that option, this is a required course. So not only will we be working together in this one, but we'll also be working in a future semester in MC323. So what are we going to be learning about this semester? Our emphasis is not on, as I said, learning how to use this media production software. We're going to be learning the techniques about how to go out and conduct research and to go out into the field, if you will, and gather information so that we can write stories in a professional journalistic style. And that includes the idea that the way that we write is going to be specific for the individual media platform delivery platforms. Okay, the way that we write a news story for a newspaper or for text online is different than the way that we might write it for radio or television or some type of picture and sound delivery online. Because think about this, we're using different senses to absorb that information. When we read a story in the newspaper or a text story on print, then the eyes are central to the way that information is input to the brain. On the other hand, a radio broadcast relies almost entirely on the sense of hearing. Television and online video, well, you're putting multiple senses to use there. Certainly picture, certainly sound, and in many instances, you think about when you're watching news, many times information will appear in text on the bottom third of the screen. And so now we've got the eyes involved along with the ears in delivering and perceiving this information. And then that third bullet point, we will be talking about social media, because the various apps that are out there today certainly are revolutionizing the way that journalists go out and do their business. And I hope at this point that I'm not telling you something that you're already pretty well aware of. But we learn about all of these things because at its core, at the very center of this course, is the idea that we're learning how to present information, news information to an audience, and educate them about things that are going on in this world, both as issues and as events. Well, I think I probably have gotten ahead of myself here just a little bit. The 4 tools of storytelling that we will be talking about in great detail this semester are those that you see on the screen now. Text probably is the one where we'll spend the most time during the first half of the semester, understanding that it's not only the words, but it's the way the words are presented on the page or on the screen on the display monitor, that we can do so in a variety of different ways using information-appropriate fonts in various sizes, in various locations on the page or on the screen, and certainly using different colors. All of these elements add up to the idea that we can present information in a general way, or we can present it in a really interesting and engaging way. And so we'll be talking about those things. Second half of the semester simply is a greater focus on the electronic forms of digital forms, too, of mass media content today, the sound and the picture, both still and moving. Social media, as I said, is going to be an important part of our course, and learning how journalists are adapting and utilizing social media in order to get the word out. The author of your textbook prepared this graphic image that appears on the left-hand side of the screen. You can probably look at it and tell that this was done a couple of years ago. Simply, well, I think probably the first thing that screams out to you is the logo for MySpace, which doesn't seem to have the importance that it did 10 years ago. And you probably can look and see maybe that there are some newer and more relevant forms of social media that haven't made this chart simply because they were probably just beginning to develop or be adapted by journalists at the time the graphic was created. Now, let me talk to you for a moment, please, about my expectations of you in this course. As I mentioned a while ago, the course does not have a focus or an emphasis on learning the techniques of using and applying media production software. But to some extent, I do have this expectation that coming into this class, in the year 2017, that in your lifetime, you have acquired certain computer literacy skills, and those would include the idea that you know how to create files in the various media platforms, in text, perhaps in sound and in video, and that you know how to manipulate these files, manipulate in the sense of storing them on your device, on your laptop or your desktop, that you know how to create folders in an organizational structure so that you can store and move around the content that you create, that you know how to move it to a flash drive and vice versa from a flash drive back to a computer. I have the expectation that you know how to use Microsoft Word or some very similar type of word processing program. Perhaps you have made a website before. The first of our two really big media production assignments, the one that we complete in the first half of the semester, right about the time of spring break, I'm going to ask you to tell me a story, and the story will be your choice, by the way, and tell it by means of putting your content, your words, and your pictures into a website. And I'm going to suggest that you use a service like Wix.com to create your website. Now, don't get all worked up on this first day thinking, gosh, I've never done a website. I don't know HTML coding. Am I in the wrong class? No. Again, the emphasis is not on learning the coding techniques or any of the really in-depth technical things about website design. That's why I suggest that you use Wix or any other website design, website template design site, because they're so simple to use. This is only a 3-page website that I'll be asking you to develop, so it will not be technically complex. What I'm interested in is, can you use a very simple website design in order to tell me a compelling story? Now, while I'm thinking about it on this subject, there are other sites out there that offer free software for you to use in developing your websites. And I'll have more to say about that in a future lesson, because we at the university have discovered that there is at least one of these services, and it's not Wix, that the university blocks. In other words, we can't get to it and use it and display it on university computers for the simple fact that several years ago it did some malicious things to the university computer infrastructure, and the powers that be up in the university computer offices put up a firewall, and we can't get access to that anymore. So, and Wix is a wonderful, wonderful website with a lot of templates for expressing your creativity. So I would go ahead and say, why don't you consider using Wix to create your website design when that assignment comes due later this semester. And the same thing goes for Windows Movie Maker. There's a very good chance that you probably use this in some 7th grade junior high school assignment, or maybe somewhere in high school. It's a very, very simple but very nicely working piece of software if you want to create a video file to upload to YouTube or whatever to watch on your Windows Media Player. And that's one of the pieces of software that you could use to complete your multimedia assignment in the second half of the semester. By the way, speaking of Microsoft Word, please understand that I am not an Apple person. Most of my professional career and the software applications in my profession are PC-based rather than Apple-based. So while I have pretty good familiarity with the professional software on the PC side, I am not too much of an Apple person. But that doesn't mean if you're an iMovie fan and that's the way that you want to create the assignments, the assignment for the multimedia storytelling project, then please feel free to go ahead and use that. I am not interested in the software or the application that you use to complete the assignment. What I'm interested in is the end result. I want to be able to look and to hear and see. I don't care how you get to that point. I just want you to be able to demonstrate good journalistic storytelling technique. But I'm not interested particularly in the type of software or the particular app that you use to create your assignments. And if you have more questions about that, send me an email and we can talk about it. Kent Library is the home to the Heather McDonald Green Multimedia Center. Perhaps you've been there. Perhaps you've heard of it. Maybe you haven't been there. But let me suggest that if you need help of any kind when it comes to multimedia applications, head on up to Kent Library to the Multimedia Center, because they've got a number of people there who are very, very proficient in using the kinds of software that you'll need to complete assignments this semester. And I think it's important for me to urge you on this in this very first lesson that maybe you're not that familiar with iMovie or Windows Movie Maker. Let me suggest that you go ahead and start planning now to have somebody help you explain. I've got links to some YouTube tutorials on the splash page of our MC221 course. But boy, there's nothing like getting some free professional help by the people in Kent Library at the Multimedia Center. Or by the same token, maybe you need some help in organizing files, moving them around, whatever. If you don't feel like your skills are quite up to snuff here, then let me suggest that you contact the university help desk. You can visit them in person. You can do this online. They have some tutorials online to help you with things. But don't wait until the last minute when you're starting, after you've gathered your information and you're trying to complete the assignment. That's not the time to start learning how to use the various pieces of software. The time to do that is now. So I mention it on day one just to give you a little push toward moving in that direction. I've also heard from students in previous semesters on the very first day, and they say, boy, it sure would be nice if we could see some examples of the work that's been done in previous semesters. And all I can say is your wish is my command in this regard. I'm not going to burden you with a lot of this information on the first day, and I'm not requiring there's not going to be a grade, and this won't be on the exam. But if you're interested in going out and looking at a couple of websites that I think have been done very expertly by students in previous semesters, here are a couple of examples that I would suggest that you go and take a look at. On the course page, homepage for the course, there are links that will take you to these two websites. And also on the same page are three good examples of multimedia storytelling from previous semesters. Well, look at this, some pretty interesting topics. This is where we put a lot of emphasis on real life stories that are affecting our activities at SEMO. And here are three really good topics that students in previous semesters have done their news stories in multimedia format. And you can go out and look at them. The links are right there on the homepage. These are three that have been uploaded to YouTube. So I suggest if you'd like to see the kind of work that has been done previously in this course, go out and take a look at these. Let's talk very briefly for just a moment about the old media and the new media. The 7 traditional forms of mass communication that began to develop many years ago. The first 3, books, newspapers, magazines, had their origins over 400, almost 500 years ago, and there are certain characteristics that we associate with these forms of print media. More recently, in the last 100 years or so, have been the 4 traditional time-based media. Each one is a medium, by the way. Together, collectively, the plural is media, and you can see that radio and television, as broadcasting, along with movies and recorded music, are all a part of what we call time-based media. Now, this course places its emphasis on how these 7 traditional forms of old media have characteristics that are going to converge with the new media, the digital world, out on the web. Let's spend just a moment and either educate ourselves or be reminded, if you've taken MC221, that old media have 3 really important characteristics. One is that the information that we get from traditional mass media tends to come from very large organizations, CNN, NBC, so forth and so on. These are corporations that make lots of money because it takes a lot of money to operate them. That's where the great expense comes into the discussion. By and large, the people who are in the audiences for the content of the mass media share some characteristics. The audience size tends to be pretty big, tends to be quite a bit of diversity in the audience, much more, the characteristics of the audience much more dissimilar rather than similar, and by and large, the people in the audience don't tend to know many of the other people. Okay, so a quick example that comes to mind, we have the Super Bowl coming up very soon. Last year's Super Bowl, 100 million people were estimated to have watched. Now, if you were in that audience, how many people did you know individually by name of those 100 million? Probably not, maybe a couple of hundred, or several hundred, but certainly not everyone in the audience. So that's another characteristic of the mass media, that the people who are getting the content, by and large, are not familiar with and don't know one another. And then this third characteristic, which is maybe the best example, is to think about any broadcast on radio or television, is that when that message is transmitted electronically through the airwaves, that the audience, every member of the audience, is receiving that simultaneously. Now, again, that's old media. You might be saying, well, what about the DVR? And I would say, well, that's the time-shifting idea. That's one of the things that's changing about this. Or you might say, what about podcasting? Podcasting is kind of like radio broadcasting, except that you and I might both download a podcast file of a program. I might listen to it this morning. You might listen to it tonight at midnight. We get the same message, but we're not getting it simultaneously. And so there's another example of a characteristic that relates to old media, but by the same token, it's also, as a form of the new media, changing the way that we consume the media content. There's no reason for me to elaborate, I don't suspect, on any of these bullet points here. You recognize I'm presuming all of these that are listed here, they share the characteristic that they're all unique and rather new because they're products of the internet age of digital media. So let's do a little bit of comparison here, old media versus new media. And the news value of timeliness is probably the most important news value that we will talk about and we will emphasize this semester, simply because the era of new media, the world of digital on the web, has enabled the journalist to get the information out in multiple ways and get it out in the most timely fashion that's possible. Some of you, I know, have studied with me in MC221, Mass Common Society. Perhaps many of the rest of you haven't, but for those of you that were with me in MC101, you know that we spent some time talking about the fact that when it comes to the characteristics of news, that timeliness is one of the most important things. News, by its definition, is what is happening now, not yesterday. There's that really old saying that there's nothing as old as yesterday's news. News is, by its very definition, something that's happening now. It has timeliness associated with it. And so we will learn that in the digital age of online journalism, the modern multimedia story begins with a tweet, and then the reporter follows up, the journalist follows up with a print story. Why? Because the tweet is the way to get the information out immediately. Then, by writing a news story and publishing it in a traditional newspaper, you can certainly put more detail, but you understand that it will be several hours before that print story makes it to a reader, if we're talking a traditional newspaper. Now, newspapers certainly deliver their information online, but nonetheless, think about this. The 140-something characters of a tweet, boy, that's a great way to get the really important headline pieces of a story out to readers. So we are pretty much at the end of this first day together. Again, please understand that my ability to visit with you in email is going to be somewhat limited until my surgeon gives me clearance to begin using my right arm, which is the one that I use typically, until I can get back into full use of that. So we're doing our face-to-face course a little bit differently. We'll be meeting online until further notice, and there will be PowerPoints that I will narrate and lecture from for each of the lessons, each of the chapters in the textbook. Please take a look at this textbook. This is one that has a lot of detail, very, very interesting stuff. I hope you enjoy using it. The syllabus that's on the rear page of your, the calendar that's on the rear page of your syllabus, which is up and available to you as a Word file at the top of the Moodle calendar page. The rear page, that calendar, gives you an indication of which textbook chapters you should be studying and in what order. And much of that information I won't be able to lecture on individually. I will hit the high points. And at the same time, please understand that the information that I'm going to be presenting in the PowerPoints, some of that information replicates what's in the textbook, but there's also some information that's unique to the PowerPoints and you won't find in the textbook. So it's been a good first day. I encourage you to go out and take a look at the videos and the websites I've called to your attention. You might want to download the instructions for some of the assignments, get a feel for what I'm asking you to do for me this semester. And certainly, if you feel like that you're going to need some assistance with, let's say, managing files, creating files, storing them, or with using some of the software that we'll be using for media production, then you might want to plan on visiting up in the Multimedia Center in Kent Library and or visiting with the people at the help desk. Hey, thanks for your attention. I hope that you get your classes off to a good start, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Okay, thanks.